Happy Friday, everybody. Hope you're having a great week. And this week we're talking about removing a criminal prosecution from state court into federal court. Now, strategically, there's a few different reasons why somebody might want to do that, but that's not. Happy Friday, everybody. Hope you're having a great week. And this week we're talking about removing a criminal prosecution from state court into federal court. Now, strategically, there's a few different reasons why somebody might want to do that, but that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about, is it possible? And the short answer is yes, it is theoretically possible. There's a little known, little discussed law within the United States Code that allows for this. It's 28 USC 1455. And so what that law says is that if there's a criminal charge in state court, there is a procedure by which the defendant can request that it be removed into federal court, so long as they make that request within 30 days of the arraignment, and then a federal judge hears the matter and decides whether or not the case should be removed. So it is possible. However, the odds of that happening are incredibly low. Now, this law and this topic has really come to the forefront of public discourse lately because one of the co-defendants in the Donald Trump indictment in Georgia is attempting just this. They're attempting to remove their case from state court to the federal court in Georgia. And the grounds under which they're arguing that it should be removed are one of the very specific reasons why it could be. That's if you or the defendant is an employee or an agent of the federal government. They work for a federal governmental agency. And during the course and scope of working in that agency, they did something that would be considered a crime in a specific state. If that occurs and that person has what's called a colorable defense, a defense to that action, that their defense would work in federal court and it wouldn't work in state court, then they can request their case be removed, right? So again, really, really specific fact pattern necessary in order for that to succeed. There are a few other ways that you can remove a criminal case from state court to federal court, but again, highly, highly specific. One of which is if you're in the armed forces and you do something under the color of your armed forces job, duties, descriptions, whatever, and that is considered a crime in a particular state, you can remove that into federal court for the disposition. Another one is if whatever you did would be a protected act under federal civil rights law, but for whatever reason it's not a protected act under that state's civil rights law, then you can request that it be removed and heard in federal court. Now, if a case gets removed to federal court, it's really kind of interesting what happens. First off, then you kind of have these parallel prosecutions. The state case continues going. They're allowed to keep going. They're allowed to have a full trial. They're allowed to have evidentiary hearings. They're allowed to do everything they would normally do. The only caveat is they're not allowed to issue a final conviction until the federal court has decided that it needs to be remanded back into state court. So they keep going and doing everything they're going to do, but then right at the very end, if that person goes to trial and loses, everything pauses and waits on the federal court. And the federal court tries their case, they do everything they're going to do, and then they make a decision on whether or not the case should be disposed of federally or if it should be remanded, or in other words, sent back to state court. And that's when they make that decision. They send it back, and then the state court issues their conviction and everything moves forward. Even if the case stays in federal court for the full duration, it goes to trial in federal court, it's presided over by a federal jury, a federal judge, state law still applies in terms of the sentencing. So if the person is convicted in federal court, they are still subject to that state's penalties and penalty range for that offense. It doesn't automatically switch over to a federal sentencing hearing, which I've talked about.
Time to start stretching shit.
So again, really kind of obscure area of the law, obscure area of criminal law that doesn't get discussed very often because honestly, it very, very rarely ever happens or is an issue whatsoever. But with this latest Georgia indictment, it's becoming this issue. So it's an interesting law to look into and to kind of do some research on. So again, if you want to look that up, it's 28 United States Code 1455 is the actual statute that talks about the mechanism of removal. But then there are statutes all around 1455, like 1442, 1443, 1444, that talk about the specific cases in which a case could be removed to federal court. So take a look at some of those chapters. They're actually kind of interesting reading, good law to dig your teeth into. As always, if you have any questions about this or anything else, shoot me an email, give me a call, let me know. I'm happy to discuss that with you. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Until then, be good and stay on the right side of the bars.
More stringent release conditions because I think it's necessary to protect the victim and others in the community and other people connected with this case. And then I also want to point out the Arizona Constitution. And then I also want to point out the Arizona Constitution. And then I also want to point out the Arizona Constitution. And then I also want to point out 21, the Victim Bill of Rights. The victim is to be treated with fairness, respect, and dignity, and to be free from intimidation.
I'm sorry, I can't play any more of that. Her voice is just so repulsive to me. Oh, God. Anyways, what she said about the Arizona Constitution and what he said about the Constitution, let's hear that one more time.
If whatever you did would be a protected act under federal civil rights law, but for whatever reason it's not a protected act under that state's civil rights law, then you can...
Protected under federal, but not a part of the state's constitution. Federally protected constitutional activity, state doesn't have that same thing. What are the fucking odds? And the thing is I was originally going to use this as just like a whoa, watch out. This is why they might be ignoring everything that we're saying and just sitting back with a smile on their face, not because they're completely ignorant and retarded and just clueless. I mean, they are, I'm sure, but so that's what I was. And then I found this guy, and then he said that, and I don't know, man. I don't know what to do. Y'all tell me. What's missing that Lane likes to do a lot of, and that they faked a whole voicemail pretty much about one guy. Well, I mean, it was just one word in there, but he's like, we're going to redress you, right? We're going to redress you. We're redressing our grievances. Look at what words aren't on this. Dude, and when she said victims' rights above all, that literally is above all, like the good stuff, like freedom of speech and shit. Arizona Constitution is fucked. I don't know. Plus, I always kind of pictured Lane just like sitting around, like all, scrubby with like 4 or 5 like federal judges just having tea and crumpets and shit. And the judges are all like talking to him and shit. He's like their little mascot, but like it's really because like they're all trying to pick his brain. You know what I mean? I mean, it could go the other way too. It could just be like they just throw him in a hole for the rest of his life. I don't know. I don't know. But I know it fits perfectly because he was redressing his grievances, and it is not on this Arizona Constitution, and it's on the real one. And I don't think it's been 30 days since his arraignment or whatever. I mean, the dominoes are sitting there waiting to get pushed over, brah. I don't know. Ocean help. But originally, before I found this guy's video, I was thinking that the girls that are prosecuting him, they know that the redress of grievances isn't on here, and that they're somehow going to use that to be like, oh, well, whatever.